Welcome back to the Writer's Room for Run Radio. My name's Trina Wilcox. Our guest today is Joseph M. Lenard. How are you doing?
I'm doing good, and it's important to have the M middle initial in there because I'm Joseph M. Leonard from the Detroit, Michigan area. There's a Joseph Leonard out of Carolina area that also writes books. So, if they don't like him, I don't want them to hold that against me.
No, my husband has the same problem. If he does not include his middle initial and people just search his name, they get a folk musician, and that is not even anything he does whatsoever. So he also includes his middle initial. So when I saw that, I thought that could be a similar situation.
Yeah, and then also my last name is pronounced Leonard, like we discussed before
Yes.
starting the recording. It looks like Lenard.
Uh-huh.
It's not French. It's Leonard, but no O in it. Like the first name Leonard has an O in it. My last name, no O in it. Because if you Google or DuckDuckGo, I prefer to use Joseph M. Leonard with an O in it, again, you're going to get a whole lot of other people, including a few dead people.
Oh, goodness. Well, let's hope that doesn't happen. Right now, we're going to talk about your experience with writing and how you can inspire and encourage other independent publishing authors and how you came to start writing and some of your writing process. We're also going to talk about your latest book. So, take me back to when you first started writing, how you just kind of got the bug and went for it.
I'll be happy to. But before we do that, I want to ask, how is Marge and Homer doing since you're there in Springfield?
Oh, they're fantastic. I
Yeah.
know the argument over which Springfield,
Right.
we'll
I'm
take it.
sorry.
Oh,
I,
it's a good.
when and where I can, I like to start off with a lame joke. It's lame, it's bad humor, but my book, Terror Strikes Coming Soon to a City Near You, is very serious subject matter. And I like to, say, no matter how serious things are, you've got to try to maintain a sense of humor or you'll be balled up in the corner, sucking on your thumb in the fetal position, crying all the time, right? But I've been writing my whole life, basically, since grade school, because I've got creative gene in me because my father, Thaddeus M. Leonard Jr., had a polka band called the Polka Kings, and they released 3 albums. So you can still, of course, find them out there today. I think an 8-track is still somebody peddling on eBay, an 8-track version of one of their albums. I didn't know they released them on 8-track. I knew they had them on vinyl. And then my dad's dad, Thaddeus M. Leonard, or Ted Leonard Sr., also had a polka band, but he never recorded albums. So I've kind of got the creative gene from my father's side of the family. And I dabbled in music in the late 70s, early 80s, but I wasn't good enough to be able to get a record deal or anything like that. Those were back in the days. There was one way you had to get a record deal. It's not like today where you could digitally record something and put it online yourself and sell it directly. Uh, so I stuck mainly then, although I wrote lyrics and music and I did record some, again, just you can't find it published anywhere. I stuck mainly with short stories and novels. And Terror Strikes Coming Soon to a City Near You, though, is my first internationally published book. Other ones were published, just on a small scale locally.
And
But
so,
I've loved writing. I just again, I having that creative side, I feel the need to put it out there.
so what's your style like? I've talked to some that definitely set aside a set time or set number of hours to focus on it. I've talked to other writers that just let the notes flow out of them and then bring them together later. How about you?
A little of both,
Okay.
a mixture of both. Uh, I have been on Social Security disability since 2004. So, unlike most people, I've got a lot of time on my hands. So, I set aside time for a project, but then also I'm free to be able to, whenever the creative juices hit me, to sit down and do something. I will, even while I'm out somewhere, we all have a smartphone nowadays. Here's a tip or a trick. I'm gonna, my next book I'm looking at, I'm hoping to be a write and publish book about some behind the scenes tips and tricks of writing and how to self publish. So here's one for free.
Okay.
Use your cell phone. They've got Siri or Google or whatever. Open your email app and dictate yourself an email when the creative juices hit you, whether it's a quote, uh, just a paragraph, or several pages. Use Google or Siri or whatever, text to speak or speech to text. I mean, put that in an email it to yourself, and then bam, you could cut and paste it onto your
Yeah.
pages. There'll be errors, of course, because those things never dictate correctly. The punctuation is always horrible. Usually some spelling's bad. It chooses a wrong word here or there. And if you're giving a character name, it may completely badger the spelling of the name, but you get your thought down while it's in your head, and that's the important thing. So that's a very important tip or trick for an aspiring writer today. And the other thing regarding style, I don't think you quite meant this, but it goes along those lines, is 99.9% of all books are cookie cutter books. Authors mainly follow creative writing formulaic guidelines. You do this, then you got to do that. You need a twist here, you put it in, twist there. You got to put the love interest here. I take those formulaic guidelines and put them through the shredder.
Uh-huh.
I wanted in all my books really, want unique approach to writing, and you as a reader to have something different. So if you're looking for something completely different than what you're expecting out of a book, Terror Strikes coming soon to a city near you. And it's not only about terrorism, it's about a lot of other things. It's not a book about death, it's about life and living. I'm not trying to scare you to death, like we said about curl up in the fetal position in a corner. No, that's not my intent. My intent is to make you live your life, but not be stupid at the same time. Be awake and alert to things around you, you know? So I write very differently than anybody and everybody else. And I mean, I hope that's a good thing.
Mm-hmm. Tell me about your decision to publish independently.
Well, nowadays there's really no choice. Uh, unless if you've got a trilogy in you and you can write the first two books and have an outline for the third book to send to a publisher saying, look, see, I've got a whole series here ready to go. A traditional publisher is not going to take a chance on you. Nowadays, they've got their catalog of writers. They pretty much stick with them. Or if you're a celebrity, right? If LeBron James decides to write a book tomorrow, all the big publishing houses will be beating down his door to sign him and give him a big advance. That's not how it works these days for the average person. You know, LeBron has the celebrity name. So they automatically know, even if it's a piece of garbage, they're going to sell hundreds of thousands of copies of that book. Your book, as a new writer, is an unknown quantity. It could be a New York Times bestseller, but they're not likely to take that chance on you as a one time writer, a one off book. So self publishing thankfully is a wonderful, wonderful alternative. And I like to say there are various forms. There's self-publishing, and then there's what I like to call assisted publishing, because it's not all the same. I mean, there's the cheap end, then there's the you get what you pay for, you know.
Mhm.
If you're willing to pay more, you get a lot more for your money.
Yeah, that's interesting too. Kind of the hybrid is also an option that I think people are learning more about. But everybody, if you go one direction, it's not all bad. If you do multiple styles of it, that's great. But I feel like if people realize they have a lot of power in independent publishing, that hopefully we'll get more stories out there published and on shelves than we ever would have before. And I think that's a great thing. I think that's a good place for writers to be at right now in the world.
Yeah, I am looking at a book along those lines, a guide, a writer's guide, an aspiring writer's book. So you have a book in you. And remember, some of the best stories you've ever read or will read come from unknown writers. And if you've got a story in you, go for it. And remember, the likes of Stephen King and Tom Clancy and James Patterson, they, J.K. Rowling, they were all unknown writers at some point, right? So uh, I've got a project. I don't know when it'll come out, but I'm putting together a write and publish guide. That's just the working title. I don't know how to write and publish. Something along those lines will be the final title. I'm targeting for later this year or early next year, I hope. But I've got a lot of money out in promotional costs for Terror Strikes coming soon to a city near you that I need an ROI on before I can invest in another self-published book. But I've achieved my dream of having an internationally published book, and I'd like to help others achieve that too. So that's kind of my next project, and I'm going that way to help others achieve that dream too.
Well, and
Like,
tell me about that. How long did it take you to achieve that? How did you maintain patience when you needed to? How did you encourage yourself to keep going when you were struggling?
well, I was again, since I've been writing since an early age, I've always written as a hobby, and I'm the holder of a couple dozen copyrights. Most of that, though, were just locally published kind of pieces. And Terror Strikes Coming Soon to a City Near You is the first internationally full, really out there published novel. And uh, I always knew it would happen. I just never knew when it would happen, when I would feel that this book is really important for our time and the story needs to be told because it's historical fiction, or as I call it, faction, part fact, part fiction. It's just fictional storyline with part uh, historical accurate chapters because my lead right character is Martin, a Detroit newspaper man who decides to write a book on terrorism.
Okay.
So my terrorism book is about following him going to write his book on terrorism. So we deal with his research about real terrorist events. There comes in the historically accurate portions. So, but I started this book actually in 2006.
Okay.
I spent about 6 months on it then, and I had my beginning, I had my middle, I had my ending even, but there were just pieces that I felt had holes and needed something more. So I put it off to the side, expecting to pick it up again later. Well, I didn't expect to wait 15 years later, but that's what ended up happening. So here's another tip or trick that will be in my writing book. Don't put hard deadlines on yourself. Deadlines are for when you've got something, a rough draft ready to go. Then you set a deadline with a publisher for the final product and cover design and all that other stuff. Don't put hard deadlines on yourself. Just write when the spirit moves you. You know, it's rare in a till you become an established writer like a King or a Patterson or a J.K. Rowling that they know they can churn out a book on a timeline.
Mhm.
Don't do that to yourself.
What would you suggest when you do get stuck though, and you do want to keep going, not putting it away for a long time, but how do you delineate between needing to put it away for a while and you just need to kind of have a refresher?
Well, if you start beating your computer with a hammer, that's
You've
a
trashed
pretty
your
sure
office.
that's a pretty sure sign you're a little stressed and frustrated with your current book.
Mhm, mhm.
And it's time to set it aside. Again, I like to interject humor. We got to keep a sense of humor with as serious as things are these days. Uh, I usually have more than one thing, one iron in the fire, so to speak. So that helps. And
Okay.
perhaps your book isn't going somewhere. Just write a little bit of poetry or write some song lyrics, change it up a bit, refresh your mind, and then again you could come to it later. Now, it's easier for me than others, I think, because almost everything I've written has come to me in a dream.
Really?
Yeah, Terror Strikes coming soon to a city near you. The opening came to me in a dream. And that's why I thought, okay, I'm writing this in 2006. But as I said, it didn't come together. The dream came back again last year, 2021. So I said,
Interesting.
okay, I get it. Now I'm refreshed and ready to go. And now is the time for this book because with the Wuhan virus hysteria, people have lost focus and seem to believe like terrorism went away. And it hasn't. You just haven't been seeing it on the news. And part of my book is a warning about that. But again, about life and living, not to live in fear, but be awake and alert to things around you.
I recently spoke with another writer that talked about things coming to her through dreams. When you have those experiences, do you need to get up as soon as you get up, even before you get out of bed? Do you take notes on that dream or does it pretty much stick with you?
Yeah, it depends on the dreams. If it's one that sticks with me, then I know it's something to write about. I had a weird one last night. I don't remember all the specifics, but somehow there was a non-existent Aerosmith song that was a soundtrack to this dream. And I woke up and darn it, it was one of those dreams I could remember only that. I couldn't remember the specifics because I was like, darn it, I would have liked to have written down the lyrics to that non existent Aerosmith song and maybe they would have recorded it.
Well, maybe it'll come to you again. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and tell me a little bit more. Tell folks where they can go to get your book and anything else that I haven't asked you. Now's the time. Tell me.
Yeah, if you want to reach out to me, you can buy the book, of course, anywhere online or in any bookstore. I'm a big believer in local, shopping local, buying local. If you've got a local bookstore, they can order it for you, or, of course, anywhere online, or you can buy an autographed copy direct from me. With the COVID stuff still lingering, book signings are pretty few and far between. So I wanted to sell autographed copies direct online. You could go to terrorstrikes.info and get a copy direct as long as you have a U.S. address. I'm not going to pay to ship one overseas, But I will include shipping to U.S. residences of an autographed book at terrorstrikes.info. I also have an author site, josephmlenard.us. Again, it looks like Lenard, but it's pronounced Leonard, and there's no O in it. josephmlenard.us, and there's a contact tab there. So if you just want to reach out about creative writing process and things of that nature, or inquire how the write and publish book is coming, by the time this airs, hopefully that project will be a little further along, and maybe you're interested in being one of the first to buy that book. Feel free to contact me. I've got no problem with that. I'm willing. I've got the time. I'm willing to converse with anybody.
That's cool. Yes, folks, if you're listening, these are the little opportunities for you to take when someone's willing to share some wisdom with you and answer your questions. Take advantage of it. Thank you very much for sharing your time. Hope you'll come back.
Thank you. Take care.
You too.